Yeah, Bijan, please start.
Okay. Good morning to all. I welcome again you all to the day 4 of ICTiBLANEI-1 2021. This morning in the first session, we have 3 papers, and the session will be chaired by Dr. Dokachi Marak. And before we begin the session, I would like to invite Dr. Dokachi Marak to kindly chair the session. And before I hand over the screen to her, let me highlight who is Dr. Dokachi. Many of us know Dokachi, even though for those who don't know who is Dr. Dokachi, Dr. Dokachi Marak is an assistant professor to the Department of Garo, Northeast Hill University, Tura campus. So over to you, Dr. Dokachi.
Thank you, Sir Bijan, for the introduction, and good morning to everyone. And I would like to welcome all the participants to the first session of today's session. So we have 3 paper presenters in this first session. So the first presenters, I just want to name out the presenters, paper presenters. So from 9:30 to 10, we will be having a joint paper from Ishani Bashya, Tanmoy Bhattacharya, and Jyoti Sharma from University of Delhi. Then the second one will be from 10 to 10:30. And it is paper from Alfina Kaidem from Manipur University. Then the third one from 10:30 to 11 a.m. we will be having another paper from Ed Surmangol Sharma from Manipur University. So I would like to request all the paper presenters to maintain the time. It's 30 minutes. And you can do the presentation for 20 minutes and 10 minutes will be for discussion. So right away, let's start our presentation for today. We have to we have to maintain the timing. So right away, I would like to request the first joint paper presentation from Ishani Bashya, Tanmoy Bhattacharya, and Jyoti Sharma from University of Delhi. And the topic for discussion or presentation will be comparing embedded clause and non-nominative subjects in Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman. So you can start now.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, Isani. Yes, for the kind knowledge of the floor and to the chairperson, the second presenter, Alfina Khaidem, because of some personal reasons, she withdraws her presentation. So at 10 to 10:30 slot, Dr. Surmangol, who is the third presenter, will take over to 10 to 10:30. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So the paper that we'll present here today entitled as Comparing Embedded Clause Non-Nominative Subjects in Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman. This is a joint paper by Ishani Vaishya, Tanmay Bhattacharya and Jyoti Sharma. Today, I, Ishani and Tanmay Bhattacharya will be presenting. So in the paper, we present a theoretical account of intra, that is within Indo-Aryan languages, and interfamily, that is across Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman. The similarities and the differences in embedded clause non-nominative subjects. So we will discuss the non-nominative subject patterns in the languages, and we will show 2 kinds of construction. One is pos-ing, which has 2 subtypes, and ek-ing construction. And we will also discuss the scope of adverbs in these 2 constructions in the languages. So this investigation that they're comparing the non-nominative subjects across the languages, it buys us the interesting finding that as far as the non-nominative subject of embedded clauses is concerned, Assamese, which is an Indo-Aryan language, is in between Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman. We thus claim that a syntactic investigation of simple case properties reveals a wealth of linguistic character that may otherwise elude us. So I'm sure most of us are familiar with the term non-nominative subjects, although non-nominative subjects are common across South Asian languages, and it is well discussed in Subbarao 2012. But our main focus here on this paper is on the non-nominative subjects of the embedded clause in Assamese Bangla and Hindi, which are Indo-Aryan languages, and Meiteilon, a Tibeto-Burman language. So let's first look at the pause-ing and egg-ing constructions in Indo-Aryan. So first we have the data from Assamese. So the 1A example is pause-ing-1 construction. So the sentence is Moi tar bhat khwa dekhiso, and the meaning, I have seen his rice eating. So here in this sentence, the embedded subject, so tar, which means his, is the embedded subject here. And as we can see here, it is glossed as he.jet. That means this embedded subject is marked as genitive case here. And the verb eat is taking a gerund marker, which is wa in Assamese. In 1B, which is the type 2, suppose in subtype 2 construction, so there the sentence is Moi tar bhat khwar kotha huniso. I have heard his rice eating. So here in this sentence, this the embedded subject is tar here. Here, just like the pause in 1 construction, here also the embedded subject is marked as the genitive case, and the verb eat is taking the gerund marker wa here. But if you see the shaded part here as shown here, this is tar bhatkwa and tar bhatkwa, it looks kind of similar, but there are differences in these two constructions. So as you can see in pause in 1, the genitive, the embedded subject is getting the genitive case mark here. But in pause in 2 as well, the subject, embedded subject, apart from the embedded subject, the clause is also has a, the clause also has the genitive case marker ra. So here ra is the genitive case marker in Assamese. Let's look at the egg-in construction. So as you have seen in the introduction, I have mentioned that in there is this two types of two subtypes of pause-in construction. But in case of Assamese, we have divided egg-in construction in two subtypes, egg-in 1 and egg-in 2. So 1C is the type of egg-in 1 construction. So here the sentence is Moi tak bhat khwa dekhiso. That means I have seen him eating rice. So in egg-in 1 in Assamese, this embedded subject tak is getting the accusative case marker. And the verb eat is getting the same gerund marker as pause in. But in case of egg-in 2, the sentence is Moi mai bhat khwa dekhiso. That means I have seen mother eating rice. So here in this sentence, the embedded subject, which is mae, here you can see this A marker is the nominative case marker. That means that embedded subject is marked as nominative in case of egg-in 2 construction. Though the meaning is similar, but in Assamese, in case of egg-in, the subject, the embedded subject, it can take an accusative case marker and it also can take a nominative case marker. Now let's see the Bangla example here. So in Bangla 2a, Ami or bhat khawa dekhechi. Here I have seen her or his rice eating. So this is pause in 1 construction. In this sentence here, the embedded subject or is case marked as genitive, just like Assamese, and the verb eat is taking the gerund marker wa here. And in pausing to construction, Ami or bhat khawar kotha sunechi. So I have heard her or his rice eating. Here as well, the embedded subject is getting the genitive case mark, and the genitive case mark can be seen in the clause as well. And egg-in construction in Bangla, that is the 2C, Ami oke bhat khete dekhechi. I have seen her or him eating rice. Here you can see this embedded subject is getting an accusative case marker. And in the verb, it's taking a participle marker te. Though all it's unlike Assamese, in Bangla, the embedded subject of the eking construction cannot take a nominative case marker. It always has to take the accusative case marker. Let's see the Hindi examples. मैंने उसका चावल खाना देखा है. I have seen her or his rice eating. Here, uska ka is the genitive marker. So it's similar to Assamese and Bangla pausing one construction where the embedded subject uska is getting the genitive case marker, and kha, the verb kha, it's taking na as the gerund marker. In pause in two construction, which is 3b, मैंने उसके चावल खाने की बात सुनी है. I have heard her or his rice eating. Here again the embedded subject is marked as genitive, and the verb eat is taking the gerund marker ni, and the whole clause is getting an genitive case marker ki here. In case of eking construction like Bangla, the embedded subject can only get the accusative case marker. It cannot be marked as nominative like Assamese. So here the verb is taking the imperfective marker te here in this sentence. Now let's look at the TB language Metelon. So in the TB language Metelon 4a, which is the pausing one construction, the sentence is I mana chak chaba ure. That means I have seen her or his rice eating. So here, as you can see, this na is the nominative, and for the simplicity we are considering this adjunctive and or the nominative case mark, ergative case mark as a nominative here. So this na is the nominative case marker, and the embedded subject ma is taking this nominative case marker in case of pausing, and the verb eat is taking the nominalizer ba here. So this is different from the Indo-Aryan language, as you can see. So in Indo-Aryan, in Indo-Aryan, in pausing one construction, the embedded subject can get the genitive case marker, but here in Metelon, it's getting the nominative case marker. So for B, this is the pause in two construction. The sentence is I mana chak chabagi watare. I have heard her or his rice eating. So here as well, the embedded subject is getting the nominative case marker. And the verb eat takes the nominalizer ba here. And he is the genitive marker that the whole clause is getting. And in eking construction, the sentence is I mana chak chabawi. I have seen her, him eating rice. So here in eking construction, unlike the Indo-Aryan languages, here Metelon takes the Metelon embedded subject takes the nominative case marker. So in all three cases of this construction, the embedded subject always take the nominative case marker. So to summarize the above mentioned data, we have clearly seen some differences. So two obvious differences are there in across the languages, that is Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman languages, which is the inter-family differences. So in Indo-Aryan languages, this embedded clause subject is marked genitive and
Ishani, by mistake you got muted, so please unmute. Can you please unmute yourself, Ishani?
I think she's not able to.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Acha, so well, so did you hear this part, the Metelon data explanation?
Yes.
Acha, okay. So now I was summarizing the data. To summarize the data, we have seen two obvious differences in Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman languages. So in Indo-Aryan, the embedded clause subject is marked genitive and accusative, but in Metelon, as shown here in 4ABC, in all the constructions, pausing 1, pausing 2, and eking, the embedded clause subject is constantly marked nominative. And in Indo-Aryan, the gerund marker for pause-ing and eking are different, but it is the same marker for both constructions and in TB. We have also seen some differences within the Indo-Aryan languages, which is the intra-family differences. So in all the three Indo-Aryan languages, the embedded clause subject is marked genitive and accusative, but in Assamese, that we have shown that Assamese has two subtype of eking, because in Assamese, the embedded clause subject can be marked as nominative as well. And in Assamese, the gerund marker for pause, ing, and eking is same, unlike Bangla and Hindi, but it's more like TB, metelon. So it will be easier for us to understand the summary of the data if we just look into this table where we have shown some templates of those constructions. In pausing one, Assamese has the template of noun with the genitive case marker and the verb, and wa is the gerund marker. And in Bangla, we get the similar kind of template here. And in Hindi, the gerund marker is na, and the noun, the subject noun, embedded subject noun, it takes the genitive marker. But in Metelon, as you can see here in the template, the noun is noun has ergative case marker, and the verb and ba is the nominalizer. And in pause-ing too, we get the similar kind of templates in all the four languages. But in eking construction in Assamese, we get two templates where in one, the noun, the embedded noun is subject noun is taking the accusative case marker, and in one, the noun is taking the nominative case marker. And in Bangla, the subject noun takes the accusative case marker, then the verb and the participle marker te. And in Hindi, the embedded subject noun is the accusative case marker, verb, and the participle marker te here. And in Metelon, in all three construction, we get the similar kind of templates. So in this table only, you can see the clear difference between the across the language, difference between the languages like Assamese, Bangla, and Hindi. In these three constructions, this embedded subject takes the genitive case marker in pausing and accusative case marker in eking. But in Metelon, the embedded subject always take the nominative case marker. And if we talk about the intra-family difference, then you can see that Assamese has in all the construction, the gerund marker is same, but in Bangla and Hindi, it's different for ek-ing construction. And in case of the case marker of the embedded subject here, the noun, the embedded subject of Assamese in eking, it can take the accusative as well as in the nominative case marker. But in Bangla and Hindi, the embedded subject always has to take the accusative case marker. So the rest of the part will be presented by Professor Tanmay Bhattacharya. So sir, over to you. I'll just stop sharing.
Okay. Okay, it can be seen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so you notice the data very clearly pointed out by Ishani. Now, slightly difficult data, but not too difficult. And I won't read through all the sentences. Scope of adverbs we're going to look at in Assamese, Bangla, and Maithilon. Not Hindi, because Hindi behaves in similar fashion to the Indo-Aryan pattern. So what we see in Assamese is very similar to what we saw in the subject case marking and the gerund marking differences as well. So you have got four patterns here, and you have in the pausing pattern, we're not taking the pausing 2 here because it is the same as the pausing 1. So just pausing. So you can see that there are two possible scope. One is we're calling matrix scope, the other we're calling embedded scope. How to understand this data? Well, if you look at the first sentence, moi bhalkoi tar bhat khoa dekhisu. In that example, there are two verbs. One is dekhisu, to see, and the other is khua, to eat. Okay, and bhalkoi is the adverb form which can have scope over either of these. And we see the pattern here. If you follow the translations, So you get a metric scope, that is, it is seeing well, but not eating well. You don't get the eating well meaning here. Similarly, not similarly, in hacking, however, you get an ambiguity. That is, you get a metric scope as well as an embedded scope, which means I've seen him eating rice well, which is a scope of the adverb on the eating. And I have seen him, sorry, the first one should be a metric scope, and the second one is embedded scope. Similarly, in as we saw in Assamese, you have this nominative ergative pattern as well. So moi bhalkoi mai bhat khwa dekhisu. In that example, also there are two possibilities, but we get only one reading, which is the metric scope reading. That is seeing well, but you don't get the eating well meaning. And if you want to get the eating well meaning, then you have to actually displace the adverb. So you can see in D, bhalkoi has gone inside the embedded clause. Okay, there you get the direct scope. From here, from bhalkoi, it just gives a scope. So basically the scope pattern, if I can just show it with arrows. So here it has scope over seeing. Okay, and here it has scope over both eating and seeing. Okay, and here what we see that if the adverb moves inside, then it has scope over eating, but otherwise it has to have scope over seeing. So that's the pattern, and you can then follow the others quickly. For Bangla, it's kind of a prototypical pattern, which we will take as the basis of the analysis. You can see in Bangla, you get in the pausing, that is in the gerund construction, with a possessive marker or genitive marker of the subject of the embedded clause, you get only metric scope. That is, ami bhalo kore or bhat khawa dekhechi. So you get seeing well as the only meaning. You don't get the eating well meaning. But in the what we're calling acting or accusative marked subject, there you get both scopes. So it is scopally ambiguous, like we saw in Assamese as well. And in Maithilan, the pattern is slightly different, but it is easy to follow because
Excuse me, sir, the time is over.
Yeah,
so
no,
I think you
sorry.
can do the.
Yeah, but I think with the permission of the organizers, this is since the
Yeah,
one paper has been.
I think yes, I think we can take 1 to 2 minutes more because we started 2 minutes late for the presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
then it's okay.
Also,
sir.
you have.
Hello.
You don't
Can I
have
suggest one thing?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Manali, who is the
Yes, sir,
organizer?
yes, sir. Yes, yes.
At the chair. Since there is no paper, after this there is one paper missing. So I think this is a very interesting paper.
Yeah.
More time should be given to this.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I support you,
Yeah,
Tanmay.
sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Since we are having only 2 paper, sir,
Yes.
I think you can continue. Yeah.
Okay. So
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Marak. So here in the Maithilan example, it is actually easy to read the scope. It is sort of Maithilan wears its scope on its sleeve. So you can just see the scope on the next appearing. So you can see the position of the adverb itself is ideally to be on this side. So you get this ai mana chak chaba fajana ure. So here it just takes scope over this. So this is a seeing scope one. So you get the matrix scope, eating well, but you don't get the seeing well. You don't get the eating well, the embedded scope here. And if you want the embedded scope, like in the Assamese D example, the last example, the adverb must move inside the embedded clause. So here, Phachana is here, okay, and it just takes scope over eating. So it's very simple to understand, and you get the embedded scope. Only you don't get the matrix scope. You can also have bhajana after the subject. So you can say ai mana bhajana chak chaba ure. In that case, also you will get embedded scope only and won't get the matrix scope. So it's kind of easy. It's Assamese that we get this two kinds of patterns, but otherwise you get one pattern in Bangla, one pattern in Maithilan. So this is the summary, and I've already explained it, so I don't need to go through it, but you can look at it that in Assamese you get more sort of patterns. In Bangla, we're taking as the prototypical pattern when we talk about adverb in our analysis. And in Maithilan, you again get this either metric scope or the embedded scope. So I've written this down here. Bangla pattern is the prototypical case. Maithilan scope relates directly to the surface order. Adverb always takes scope over the element next to it. Assamese is in between, that is in the ing 2, that is with the nominative embedded clause subject. You get a Tibeto-Burman pattern. Adverb scope behaves like the Tibeto-Burman languages. When it comes to genitive accusative mark, that is pause ing constructions and the acing 1 construction, you get the it behaves like the Indo-Aryan Bangla Hindi. Okay, so this is the analysis. Again, like yesterday, I'm going to give a schematic analysis so that everyone can more or less follow. The intra-language differences, we saw three intra-language differences. The first intra-language difference between pausing 1 and pausing 2. Remember, pausing 1 and pausing 2 difference is only that in pausing 2, you have a noun which sort of embeds the gerund. So it is reduced to the absence versus presence of a nominal head above the non-finite embedded clause. That is the gerund clause. Above that embedded clause, you have a noun in pausing 2, like wa in Maithilan, kotha in Bangla, etc. Baat in English, Hindi. And the second intra-language difference between the pausing and acing, on the other hand, is reduced to the presence versus absence of a nominal head inside the non-finite embedded clause. So if you remember the pattern, if you have a accusative mark, a subject, then we are suggesting that there is no nominal inside that. So there is no question of marking it, the subject, genitive. And the third intra-language difference is between one versus two subtypes of acing constructions in Bangla Hindi and Assamese respectively. In Assamese, you get the Tibeto-Burman nominative ergative pattern as well. This difference boils down to the Assamese acing structure mimicking the inter-language difference between IA and TB, which I note down here. For Maithilan, the TB or TB in general, I'm assuming I'm not looked at all. We have looked at only some. Being an aspect mood dominant languages, we assume that there's an aspectual head embedded under the non-finite embedded clause that is responsible for consistent nominative ergative marking of the embedded clause subject. Furthermore, we assume that the main interlanguage difference is reduced to Maithilan not admitting any DP or NP structure in the non-finite embedded clause, thereby accounting for the lack of genitive on the embedded subject. We claim that Assamese acing 2, that is a nominative structure with nominative ergative on the embedded clause, is a case of DP, NP less non-finite embedded clause in such structures like in Maithilan or TB in general. Very briefly, schematically, I only roughly I'm showing. You don't have to concentrate on everything. You can just look at the shaded part, which is the gerund phrase, which is sort of embedded under embedded clause. This embedded clause, this is the embedded clause. This is a non-finite embedded clause. This is non-finite. So you can see it's non-finite here. And this is where we have shaded in the data part as well. And here we are suggesting that there is a incorporation of the object into the verb. And there's further movement that we haven't shown. So it goes up like this. And then there is the subject is of the embedded clause is marked genitive. See the genitive marking here. So these two things, the noun incorporation and the presence of a nominal head, whether you want to call it D or N, which is responsible for genitive on the subject, makes it totally nominal. Okay. Similarly in this also, there is no difference, as I said earlier, that there is a nominal head which is dominating the gerund or the embedded gerund phrase in pausing 2. And in Aking, what we're suggesting as that, well, Aking in Indo-Aryan, we're suggesting that it's a participial phrase, and there is no nominal, there's no DP or NP phrase inside this TP, and there is nothing dominating which is nominal as either. So in fact, the matrix verb marks the subject of the embedded clause as accusative, and that's why you get this consistent ka in Assamese, ke in Bangla, ko in Hindi, and of course Maithilan is different. So in TP in general we get one pattern only, and of course more work is needed. And one of my recently graduated PhD student, Padma Achom, I think she presented here as well day before yesterday. In her work, there's a detailed structure of where to put the aspect, how many aspect phrases, etc. But we are taking the understanding that these are aspect mood dominant languages, they behave differently, and we don't get raising of the nominal head even if we get an incorporation. There is no nominal, there is no other nominal head here, and this aspect is responsible for whatever you want to call it, agentive marking or nominative or ergative. Okay, so more work obviously needs to be done on this if we look at more Tibeto-Burman language. Now the last part, that is the adverb scope that we saw. The adverb scope actually nicely fits into this. It clearly brings out the difference in nature of the embedded clauses in the languages and different constructions. In terms of the intra-language differences, the genitive case on the embedded clause subject accentuates the nominal character of the gerundive phrase in Indo-Aryan, along with noun incorporation and nominal head raising not shown, as I pointed out just now. Whereas the accusative marked embedded clause in Aking constructions makes the embedded clause less nominal, thereby allowing for additional possibility of embedded scope for the adverb. An indication the analysis is on the right track comes from the fact that the same reason can be given for the inter-language difference in case marking of the embedded clause subject, since the embedded clause in Tibeto-Burman is also less nominal due to lack of genitive marking on the embedded subject. So just to briefly summarize about the scope pattern, what we're saying that since these are kind of totally nominalized structures, you see that pattern everywhere. In the pausing, it is not possible if you have an adverb here, it is not possible for the adverb to sort of take narrow scope or embedded scope. It can only take scope over the matrix verb. Okay, whereas in this case, in accusative, there is no genitive, and that sort of it binds the clause less, and sort of you can say it's a kind of loosely bound clause. And if you put an adverb here, it's possible for the adverb to go inside to take scope or to take scope here. In Maithilan, we saw that we actually need, if you have an adverb here, you can take scope only on this. And if you well, actually we saw that the adverb needs to be here somewhere to take scope on this verb. But if you need to take scope on inside in the embedded clause, then you rather put the adverb inside the embedded clause. So again, this is possible because the structure, this embedded clause structure, is less nominal. So it is more sort of verbal and less nominal, whereas, and that is true for this as well. You can say this plus n minus v, whereas for the pausing constructions, it's more nominal and less verbal. So that's the difference, which actually gives us the adverb scope for free. And I end by again repeating what Ishani has said, that we believe that any typological account, thus informed by syntactic or structural explanation, leads to a richer form of typology. And I think Professor Subbarao will agree with this. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair Lady, we can have 10 minutes discussion.
Okay, thank you so much for this joint paper. It's very interesting and exhaustive. So Sir Tanmoy and Ishani, thank you so much for this paper. Now it's time for discussion. Open for discussion. Any queries? You can.
Yeah, Dokachi.
Okay,
Dokachi. Hello.
Yes, Subbarao.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me, Dokachi?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. It's a very interesting paper, Tanmay and Ishani. I was really fascinated. And some of the things about the scope as to why the scope is there, about the embedded clause with the Kana, Ram Ka Jana. This was discussed long time ago in 73, not exactly the same terms as you did. 73 in my book, published in 84, my PhD thesis.
Okay.
You might like to see at some point, the book is there in the library.
Yeah.
So you might like to see some of the things I have mentioned, about the Kana phrases. Are they more sentence-like? Are they more phrasal-like? Etc. Etc.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you might like to see that.
Yes. Definitely.
Very fascinating paper, and this is the type of work we need to have to explicate the phenomena in a rational way as to why, what is this, instead of just cataloging, this is like this is like this. What you have done, a very good attempt, taking the scope of the adverb into account very neatly. Both three of you or both of you, I don't know, have explained very systematically. I'm very happy, and this is the type of work I would like to see more, because you are the people now who have to carry it further.
Yeah, thank you, Subbarao. Actually, your work, your book, which I don't know, people, everybody here must be knowing, but if you don't know, you have to have this book. It's not enough to hear about it, but please try to have a copy of the book, because it's an invaluable asset for anybody working on Tibeto-Burman language, Austroasiatic languages, Munda languages, and of course Indo-Aryan. You find lots of discussions here and there, but for these at least two main groups, you will have a very good summaries of the data facts and a theoretical insight. I teach this book 6 chapters or 3 chapters of this right now I'm teaching, in fact, and last year too I taught this in our course. So it's a valuable tool, and we looked at your chapter on non-nominative subject. Ishani went through it and Jyoti went through it. I was familiar with it, so it was very useful for us to come up with this kind of data set and sort of a little narrative, a story.
Tanmay, just for the information of the audience, the name of my book is Complementation in Hindi Syntax, where I have considered the complement clauses and the gerundival clauses, not gerundival, infinitival clauses in Hindi in detail, including participles. This is 1984, published from Delhi. Somehow the book got it did not get as much circulation as it was expected, because of, the publication is from Delhi. Not many people knew about it. So anyway, somebody, if you are interested, you can see, and you can see how Indo-Aryan works and how Tibeto-Burman works. And Tanmay, this optional case marking of nominative versus genitive is found in Boro also. I mentioned it in my book. Okay, then there may be other Tibeto-Burman languages too, where you can have this kind of thing. And using your tool to see the scope, then the sentence hood or the phrasal hood of the embedded clause can be decided.
But the interesting finding for us is the Assamese pattern. So it is like all of us know that it is in the northeast region, but in terms of syntax, we do find certain patterns. But here, looking at sort of deep syntax, not too deep, but the case marking and the embedded clause and non-finiteness, we find that it has like one leg into the sort of Tibeto-Burman pattern, which I think is revealed through this kind of study.
Thank you for this wonderful paper.
Thank you.
Can I ask, it's more of a query, right?
Your voice is getting cut.
Ma'am, we are not able to hear you clearly.
Oh. Here, I'll louder. This is it's a beautiful Ishani. I'm very happy to see you presenting such a beautiful paper. And thing is, this dichotomy between nominative and ergative, this is one thing that is there in the language. And of course, I want to know that when you have this ergative, or you label it as ergative or nominative,
Does it move to the TP spec position like any other subject? Both the ergative and the nominative. This is a very basic question, I know, but John Mark, did you get it? Can you hear?
Sir, you are on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I was waiting for if Ishani wants to answer this question. Ishani, would you like to answer this question? Or Jyoti? Jyoti is also here.
Yeah, I think in this, the data that we have discussed here, the subject, it moves to the spec of TP position.
Okay, so there is, I mean, when it is ergative, you don't have any such difference between the position, like the nominative subject or ergative subject, irrespective of the labeling, right?
Yeah, I think the idea is that in the embedded clause, I said in the pattern towards the end that when it is nominative or ergative, we're not taking a position because I have not investigated this and neither has Ishani or Jyoti. So we're saying that inside the embedded clause itself, it gets marked, whether you call it nominative or ergative. And the responsibility is something like the Tibeto-Burman aspectual head rather than the T head. And that's why you get this agentive reading and ergative reading. And later on, it moves to the spec of embedded TP. You know, because that is the licensing position for subjects. So that's the idea.
Okay, thank you. And just another observation that since I work with a lot of TB languages also, my staff in the center, and when you look into Assamese and TB, there are a lot of similar structural patterns. And this is one that has emerged, and there would be very interesting papers in future, I suppose. So the young scholars should come up. And of course, we should also put in some work.
Yes, we should do collaborative work, you know. Subarao, Madhumita, and our team, we can get together and do a collaborative work and looking at Assamese in this fashion.
Yeah. It's high time we did it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ishani.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Any other?
Sir, I have a very simple question.
Sure.
Yes. The marking of genitive in Indo-Aryan in the embedded clause and the marking of nominative or ergative in the Tibeto-Burman, sir. What is allowing and what is restricted them and differentiating these languages in such a way that, sir?
Okay. Yeah. So in the analysis part, what we pointed out is that the clause, the embedded clause, the gerund phrase or the embedded clause, that's a non-finite embedded clause, is much more nominal in Indo-Aryan. Okay. And in the Tibeto-Burman, it is less nominal. And this nominal character is given by actually the genitive marking on the subject, as well as, something is happening between the, like bhat khua in Assamese, bhat khawa in Bangla, or chawal khana in Hindi. There is it behaves almost like a complex predicate. So the chawal, the rice, actually incorporates into the verb, and then it is like a single head which moves to a higher nominal position. So these two characters together, the genitive marking on the subject and this kind of nominal incorporation, makes this whole embedded clause very nominal. Now, because of the nominal, what I think, as Subara also said, that he had discussed something like this in his PhD a long time back. Because of this nominal character, the adverb cannot enter and take a scope on the eating activity. It can only take scope over the matrix clause verb, which is seeing. So this is a difference. I think it is more nominal in Indo-Aryan and less nominal and more verbal in Tibeto-Burman. And Assamese
in that case, sir, the embedded clause, the ma, if we replace with a proper noun also, tomba, chauba, but still it cannot take the genitive also, sir.
Right, it cannot take genitive. So it is always less nominal. Yes, that is the right observation. The only time it can take genitive, not the subject, the whole clause is the whole thing, then you put a gi, because then you have the wa tare or something, that example that we had, mana chak chaba gi wa tare, and there you can get that. But that's the whole clause marked genitive from outside. But inside that embedded clause, no genitive is possible, which we are taking as evidence that there is no nominal head inside the genitive, inside the gerund.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think still there are the scope of discussion, but
Yes.
because of the time constraint, let me stop here. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much once again, Sir Tanmoy and other joint presenters. So we'll be moving on to the next presenter. Since we don't have Alfina Kaidem, I would like to invite Ed Surangmol Sharma from Manipur University, and the topic for discussion or presentation is correlation between attributive adjective and its prefix in Manipuri, a revisit. So it's time for you, Surmangol. You can take your time now.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hi, yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Excuse me, Sir Bijen.
Yes.
So what about the time?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I will remind. Okay, in between, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Can I start? Hello, Bijen.
Yes, sir. Yes, please carry on, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. All right. Okay. This is the talk on the correlation between attributive adjective and its prefix swa in Manipuri.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, are you going to share PPT from your end, or should I share from my end, sir? Your PPT is not visible.
Okay, then you can share from your end.
Okay, sir.
It's not visible.
Yeah, it's not visible. Just give me 1 second. Yes, I'm sharing. Okay. I hope it's visible.
Okay.
No. Okay, sir. Okay.
Talking about Manipuri adjective is not, in fact, it's not an unexplored aspect in the study of Manipuri grammar. Okay, there are considerable number of works on Manipuri grammar, or Manipuri adjective particularly. So I won't go through the introduction of Manipuri, only the point I could mention about Manipuri, which is very significant, is verb roots are generally monosyllabic, and each syllable may be considered as a morpheme, exhibit agglutinative morphology. And talking about the writing system, writing Manipuri using Mitai Mayek, it's the name of the script, has already been implemented officially and is going on full swing. And practice of writing or printing the language in Bangla script is not yet completely replaced by Mitai Mayek. And one important fact, so Manipuri or Meitei law, which is the mother tongue of the Meiteis and the Manipuri Muslims, which we call it Manipuri Pangals. Then I'm going to talk about it is a well-accepted forms of adjective, attributive, particularly people call it, many scholars have call it attributive adjectives. So prefixation of swa to a verbal noun, and swa is identified as attributive prefix, which I got from Chalaya 1997. Then a minimal form of verbal noun comprises a verb root plus a ba or ba nominalizer suffix. Thus, an attributive adjective appears as apaba, good, amuba, asangba, achumba, arangba, likewise. So I have one example, apaba, me, a good person, amuba, fi, a black cloth. So this is the people or many speakers, native speakers also believe this is the attributive form of Meitei-Lon or Manipuri adjectives, apaba, amuba. And then I call it, this is, what is this is swa prefix is very important role in the throughout the Manipuri grammar. So shorts, I got it from Conard. So Shwa is considered as a cognate of Karvi A, which is a reflex of Proto-Tibeto-Burman A. So primary function, I call it, seen as a nominalizing prefix in view of its widespread prevalence while forming coordinate compound nouns without pa or ba. We have seen in Manipuri that there are, very liberal use of these prefixation, Shwa prefixation, like in the coordinate compounds, like Ayingasa, weather, Awa ana, suffering, Awok atom, heated argument, Anawa pen, fresh harvest, usually of vegetables, and Asonana, weekend old person. Likewise, here we see the occurrence of Shwa, which is definitely functioning as a nominalizing function. Then we have seen in the personal names also, like without ba, Amu is the name of a person, Angau, then Abe. So personal names, we have personal names with ba, also Amuba, Athauba, and the personal names, even personal names without Shwa, then Nganba, then Chauba. So from this, based on the above data of names, naming, we know that Shwa and Pa or Ba do not depend on each other, not necessarily they should occur together. Here we see sometimes Shwa can occur without Pa, and Pa still occurs without Shwa also. So either, but the fact is, either prefix can change a verb into a noun. Then we have more examples here, family names or surnames. So Meitei surnames usually ends with fam, another what you call it, it's a compound or it may be a suffix pam. So here we have a same, here it is without fam, then a thokpam, aribam. Here still we see the occurrence of Shwa. Not all Meitei family names begin with Shwa. In fact, without there are many of the surnames are without, they are not begun with Shwa. So, however, the role of Shwa as a nominalizing prefix is very significant in Manipuri word formation. Here, this type of saben, this type of word, I don't find many. For the presentation, I got only one example so far, but I believe there would be some more words of such kind. So, arangtham, I found this kind of formation unique. So, which is a professional arranger in a ritual ceremony or name of such a profession. We call it arangtham. Then, talking about this is whether do we need to have a attributive adjective as a distinct category or not. Adjectives are derived usually from state verbs via affixation that involves both prefixation and suffixation. There are cases where prefixation is not involved while modifying a head noun that would be discussed later in the, okay, I have some about this. So derived forms resulted in by using both strategies without context are difficult to assign them as adjectives or nouns. So examine the example number 8. If we consider a sentence like copula construction, we see masi afaba lairik ni. So afaba is here, it is the adjective of the head noun lairik, and the lairik si afabani. Here the afaba is suffix with ni. So in this case, whether it is in the nominal position and yes, so whether do they have some, should we consider still it is a activity adjective or not. So now the affirmer may be here, in the English equivalent sentence for the B, I have this book is a good one. So now the affirmer may be good or good one, where in the latter case, we may consider either possible assumption as in the following. For this case, I have considered two possible assumptions. So having a suitable unexpressed head in the phrase, or having an inherent potential tendency to function as a head in the phrase other than functioning as a property word by a affixation. These are my two assumptions, out of which, and somebody, while discussing with some of my colleagues, they prefer, even they have the, maybe likely the first one may be considered also, the first assumption. So anyway, of course, I endorse the second possibility, second assumption, because this is achieved through affixation of both prefixation and suffixation, or sometimes with either prefixation or suffixation.
Gurumangal, can you talk a little louder? It's very difficult to hear.
Okay, sir. I don't know whether
Thank you.
Network. Is it clear now, sir?
It's slightly better, yes.
Okay. I will try to my best.
Thank you.
So I endorse the second possibility. Then, because we have, considering the fact with the compound formation, so confirms that schwa is a nominalizing prefix which enables a verb denoting property of something or someone to enter into a nominal category. Then what is the role of pa or ba suffix? Of course, this suffix can bring about nominalization as well as relativization, as happening in other TV languages. A modifying of head by a property word may also be seen with pa or ba suffixation without a prefixation. In such a situation, if the suffix function as a nominalizer or relativizer, needs to give a second thought to it. For example, I have the example number 9, ma pang the mini. Here, pang the mini, he is or he is a person who is cowardly. So as we are aware of it, sometimes it is called when the predicate, many scholars endorse it as the predicative use of adjective also. So, but here in the presentation, I call it is the property verb, or which is mostly called it state verbs. So, tomba phai aduna mayamna mabu nungshi. Tomba is good, so everyone loves him. So in the B, tomba afaba mini. So here phai and afaba. So afaba is derived from the verb pa, verb root pa. So here I call so word and so less word as an adjective. It is confirmed that so is used as derived nouns to derive nouns along with the suffixation of pa or ba. They occur in an NP as modifiers. They are property words which are used as modifiers in an NP, but their forms are without schwa. So there are two types of property words using as modifier in an NP as in the following. Number 11, Tomba afwamini. Tomba is a good person. Gulab fajaba laini. Rose is a beautiful flower. Here, afaba is with swa word, I call it, and fajaba here it is a swaless word. But when we see the English translation, English equivalent, in English it is good and beautiful. I mean, it is looks, it behaves as a adjective. But here in the Manipuri, afaba and fajaba, so we will talk, I mean, a little more about in this further. So formation process of sa word and swaless word, where does the difference lies between them? The proposal made here may highlight possible facts, okay? So in both cases, nominalizer retains, without which modifying function seems to be inadequate in general, though a few exceptions that is going to be discussed also. So let's compare the following two forms, a sengba and sengdaba. Here, a sengba is a swa word, sengdaba is a swaless word. Here we see the negative suffix da is here, and the both have the nominalizer ba, nominalizer suffix. So in 12a, okay, so in this regard, my query in the paper is that whether, of course, these are, we may see these are verb roots as the same, and in what way they are related. So does the disallows swa or vice versa? This is the basic question. So my assumption is a given root has a tendency to select, I assume in this presentation that a verb root has a tendency to select swa prefixation or unselect it. Once the verb root selects swa prefixation, as a consequence, this allows the process of pre-nominalization verbal derivation, as a result of which BR verb root may give rise to a trisyllabic word only, such as afaba, amuba, asengba, amotba. So far, I have come across if the word has swa prefixation, so far, to the best of my knowledge, I found Manipuri has only trisyllabic word. So the verb root, this allows the, verb root allows the process of PVD when it unselects swa prefixation. However, PVD process may remain expressed or unexpressed depending on the context of use. So if PVD process remains unexpressed, another relevant constituent preferably occurs in the construction as in 13a. Also, the similar construction may happen when PVD expresses as in 13b. So here, Tomba yamna phaba mini. Tomba is a very good person, yamna phaba. So here, phaba is without swa prefixation. Okay, but in the B, Tomba yamna phataba mini. So, but in the 13C, we see Tomba phaba mini. This is not possible, so far to my knowledge, but the target meaning is Tomba is a good person. Either, if you want to make it acceptable, C, so Tomba phaba mini. So a form comprising verb root, then negative suffix, then nominalizer suffix does not require adjectival prefix as a superfluous item, as a chadavatsak, uneaten rice, the rice which is uneaten. This is I cited from the Imobashing and the Sarvajit. So it appears that the presence of verbal derivational suffix, which mean verbal derivational suffix the or the. This allows swap prefixation to the verb root. However, the present paper might this present paper argues the above point from a different perspective as selected swap prefixation, but that in turn encourages PVD process. Second, there are still so less words, so less verbs of which PVD remains unexpressed. In other words, they are nominalized monosyllabic verbs without swap prefixation, yamna, phaba, lupa. So hence, non-monosyllabic status of a verb may not determine the absence of swap prefixation, though both swap prefix word and swap-less word maintain modifying function of head nouns. They appear as representation of different grammatical construction. So talking about the position of adjectives in an NP, so many scholars have described adjective, and adjective may precede or follow a head noun. So I have some citations here. So however, earlier works on Manipuri adjective have paid less attention on the positional constraints when the head has more than one adjectives. We know that an adjective, head noun can have more than one adjectives. So here, though Manipuri is also considered as a kind of construction where adjective may follow or precede a head noun. Here 14a, this is quite unacceptable. Amunba ahauba hainau. Amunba ahauba hainau, atumba khara. Okay. So here the head is here, and these are all so-called attributive adjectives. Here the quantifier, but I don't, this is unacceptable construction. And the B, here I find, so all the adjectives follows the head noun. Of course, maybe many people, somebody may endorse it, but it is, I find this is less favored construction, though post-head modification is granted. So then another possibility here, we see a number of adjectives here, attributive adjectives before the head noun. This is more acceptable pattern I found. So amunba atumba ahauba, amunba atumba ahauba hainau khara. So out of these, the 14C is more is found more acceptable. No, because the comprehensibility level decreases if there are more than one post-head adjective. So speaker prefers the above pre-head position of adjectives. So pre-head position of adjectives is viewed as a recent development in the language due to Indo-Aryan influence, which may be unlikely because fundamentally a language is not susceptible to change its grammatical rule so easily. In most cases, the borrowed items from Indo-Aryans are lexical ones, which may include compounds, etc. There must have been a restriction on the pre-head elaboration instead of having it on the post-head elaboration if the pre-head elaboration is considered as an adaptation from an external source. The present paper takes a stand to consider pre-head modification as all as post-head modification in the light of Manipuri is a pre-head final language typologically. So I will not go into details because we come across also there are so far adjectives which occurs only after the head noun. So I have a few examples like ahan, it would be old person or elderly, angang, it would be child or young or inexperienced, pakham, it may be the bachelor as a noun, as well as youthful of a man, or lesabi, bachelorette, or even it's a property of a woman, youthful. So with a referent noun, the above word can be used as an adjective, while the order is, we find it in a fixed order. It occurs only in the possessed position. Waza andu tabaktagi pothare. So the old teacher has retired from his service. So here we cannot, this ahan, it cannot come, it cannot occur before the head. Ahan wajadu. So then as a noun, here ahansi aigi imani, the old woman, ahansi, maybe ahan could be old woman or old maid. Ahansi aigi imani, the old woman is my mother. So similar words we have come across recently that there are some similarities in such areas like in Boro, which I got from Scottilense, Baurai, Borai, Fisa, etc. So in Manipuri, the order between the modifier and the it says it fits, at least in such situation, while in Boro, the modifier of a head noun may precede or follow the head noun. So it may be too early to decide adjectives without power ba do not precede the head noun in a form not, because we need further investigation and we may need more data to ascertain it. However, the present observation just giving a point for to begin the further journey. So we consider the word atomba again. So youngest child or youngest among the sibling of someone or among the siblings. So which belongs to the same semantic category as ahan. When the said word is used as a modifier, unlike ahan, it may precede or follow the head noun. I assume atomba ahan, they are more or less the same, belongs to the same category. However, in the case of atomba, it may precede the head or it may follow the head, as in the example, iboton, ibobiki, atomba machani, and in the B, iboton, ibobiki, macha atombani. Okay, so I have some summary conclusion. So we have standalone adjectives are derived from verbs, particularly from state ones in general. Verb root seems to have a tendency of selecting or an unselecting, it should be better, unselecting swap prefixation, selection of swap prefixation by VR blocks PVR, selection of swap prefixation by VR allows PVR process as well as enhancement in the NP modifier achieves through the unselection of swap prefixations to behave differently syntactically than the ones produced by swap prefixation. Selection or unselection of swap prefixation being about different grammatical strategies. So observe that pre-nominalization, non-monosyllabic situation of a verb is a result of unselection of swap prefixation, but not as pre-nominalization, non-monosyllabic situation prevents swap prefixation, because there are instances where pre-nominalization, monosyllabic verbs occur without swap prefixation in 13a. So the paper does not yet decide when the adjective occupies nominal position, usually in a copula construction, would then the adjective be treated as a noun or an adjectival noun or something else. The language entertains pre-head elaboration that is allowing more than one adjective precedes the head noun, leads us to think of such a pattern may not be an adaptation of external influence. The pre-head pattern appears more robust than that of adjective follows the head noun because the latter prefers accommodation of more adjectives in most cases in order to avoid comprehensibility deficit. The pattern of adjectives follows the head noun in compounds may not be conclusive to decide on the basic word order of the modifier in the head noun. Okay, this is all about my presentation. This is a reference, and thank you all for patient listening.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that wonderful presentation. And I think we have another 20 minutes left. So, Bijen, if you have any announcement regarding the discussion, should we give all the 20 minutes for discussion, or what should we do?
Yeah, we can have 10-minute discussion. If there are interested participants, then we can continue.
Okay. Okay, it's time for discussion now. If there are any queries regarding the paper, the presentation, it's time now.
Tanmosha raised the hand, yes.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, Shurmangal. This was a very nice paper, very thoroughly researched. I agree with most of you, what you're saying. I have worked some time back on adjectives and the internal structure of the noun, adjective phrase and noun phrase, and there are certain similarities. I'm not sure about the connection with the syllabicity, but the other parts are very interesting, I find. I have two observations which you might want to look at them further. One is your towards the end you talk about the sequence of adjectives and why certain order is not allowed. You are not sure about it. I'm sure you know about this line of work. I think even Dixon in 80s, 82, I think he had looked at this. But also very thoroughly, there is a book on adjective ordering. It is within the sort of descriptive syntactic framework by Cinque. So Cinque, 1994.
Yes.
It is a linguist, and he has looked at this many languages and looked at the sequence of adjectives and found, like, for example, the possessive precedes the cardinal, which precedes the ordinal, which precedes the quality, which precedes the sides, which precedes the color, which precedes the nationality, like that. So there is a body of work on that, and you might want to revisit. In this connection, we actually, with Gorosham, Hidam Gorosham, and some of our students, Mate students, we had discussed this in a workshop, this sequence order, in 2013 in one of the summer schools, and we have some papers coming out of that. And there we found, for example, in Maithelon, you can get this different orders like this. We called it subjective comment, then size, age, shape, color, gender, nationality, material, and then the nominal, the noun. So we had examples like Wagi, Koryagi, Asanba, Apakpa, Ariba, Achau, Umai, bamboo, Korean bamboo, green, flat, old, big, strong fan. So those were good. And this is a very interesting area. And I think within the generative tradition, there's some work, a lot of work actually. But within the typological tradition, as I said, Dixon has looked at it. But maybe one can look at our languages and see whether they follow that hierarchy of adjectives like size, shape, color, or not. And we might find something very interesting. That's the first comment. And the second comment is another interesting. You haven't looked at this, but you might want to use it to support your theory. We also looked at mixing, language mixing. So when you have, let's say, a white flower, so then you will say, like, if you just mix the adjective, like say white, then if you say lai, the flower, lai white is not very acceptable. I mean, it is like rather uncomfortable. It's not totally ungrammatical, but lai white is not very good. You could say white flower, of course. Within a Manipuri sentence, you could use white flower, but white lai is okay. This I have tested with some native speakers, and white lai is okay. So white is the English word, and lai flower is the Maithilan word. And you could also say flower, angoma. So that was possible. So full in English is possible, but if the noun is switched into English, then it has to be the English order. So this is well researched in the code mixing literature in other contexts when they looked at Punjabi, English, etc. like that. So that might be interesting that Maithilan would not allow if the lai is not switched, that is the flower is not switched, then you can't put the English order like the adjective noun order. You if you just switch the adjective, then it has to be adjective noun order like the Maithilan basic order and not adjective order. So there are two observations which you might want to explore further.
Yes, thank you. And I have an impression sometimes, as you said, like angawulai, is it? And hello.
Yes.
Yeah, angawulai. That is white flower. And do you mean that lai angawba? It is less preferred, right? Lai angawba. Hello.
Is it less preferred? Okay. I just checked data at home. Yeah, it is. It is both are actually okay, but then.
But it's what. So sometimes I have the impression like that. So why we have more. I didn't discuss much about the which adjective sequence of adjectives anyway. But in these examples, anyone can come. There is not restriction because. But when the more adjectives, there are more adjectives, then it necessarily go before the head noun. So it may be I want to go further why it happening, because sometimes I didn't discuss here, but relative clause construction, I think in some way they have some connection of relative clause construction. Once I have said when we have a string of relative clause construction, they prefer the before the head.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not very sure about it, but whether that kind of construction, if it is more relative clauses, more than one.
That is very interesting observation. I can comment on that later on, but there might be other questions.
Yeah. Yes.
Other questions. Yeah. Thank you.
In the chat box, we have some, I think, clarification. Also, yeah, it's from Madam Caroline. She's talking about the Garo. In Garo, we have only suffix "-s" to derive adjectives from verbs. And another is the same goes for derivation of ordinals, but we do have unproductive prefixes to derive adjectives. Ma'am, would you like to say something? Madam Caroline, would you like to say something?
Yes, this is what I have said because my last entry is what is normally adjectives in English, and maybe it is in other languages. In Garo, the equivalents are verbs. We have so many verbs only. Just to say something is sweet, something smells fragrant, and somebody is good, something is good. We have mostly verbs only. Most of them are verbs. We have genuine adjectives we do have, but many of the words are say something is bad, something is good. Most of them are like verbs only. And out of this, we have to derive adjectives. And for derivation of adjectives, we have very popular and very frequent use of gapa, the suffix gapa. So with gapa only, we derive adjectives from verbs. But if we dig further, we'll see that we do have unproductive prefixes also, which we have long forgotten and how to use them. That's all. Thank you so much. Because all of these, makes me think about my language, what devices we use in order to convert verbs into adjectives. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, madam. Any other questions or suggestions regarding this paper?
Yeah, I just have a compliment. Sir Mangal, it's an exhaustive paper, very good analysis, detailed. And I would like to get a copy of it sometime when you have.
Yeah, sure, definitely, sir.
Sir Mangal, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm very much here.
Okay. So, can we see your charming face?
I'm no longer charming.
When I saw you, you were very charming.
I growing old.
Oh, you look as charming, man. Hello, very good. Nice to see you. Because seeing is believing. Okay. Nice to see you, man.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Just one comment that I said that I will make on your relative clause observations for Mongol. There,
Yes.
It's interesting because technically, as you perhaps know, relative clauses are considered not really selected arguments, but as adjuncts. It's not really.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the syntactic structure shows that as well.
Yes.
These adjuncts are normally more mobile.
Mobile.
Like Mimi was saying yesterday about adverbs in Angami. When adverbs for all languages, they're more mobile. So in fact, they're more mobile than adjectives.
Yes.
You find that exactly opposite of what you're observing. That in the relative clause, you actually get a pre-nominal order.
Yes.
You're saying relative clause followed by noun, that is the order. Even though relative clause functionally, semantically would be a kind of modifier, attributing modifier. But you find it as sort of, you find that order and you don't find the other order. So that is an interesting sort of observation, I thought.
So what I observed, I'm not very sure about it. I haven't worked it in detail. But lately, I took at some sample of relative clause, because in case of relative clause, definitely a head noun would be there. So in cases of Manipuri, what actually happened, I take some chunks of relative clauses and I make it a sequence. Okay. So the same sequence, when you move to the post-head position, it fails to work. Yeah. So there is something to do with the proximity of the head noun and a particular relative clause. So that order. So there are cases because most of the quantifier, numerals, many things in the noun phrase, it may be a very expensive or very big, large noun phrases. So where you can put many other constituents. So the preferable, if you put all the adjectives pre-head position, it doesn't disturb all the other constituents which normally fix in order. So numerals, quantifiers, they are post-head. They cannot be moved.
Okay.
So
because our position of adjective is like pre.
It may be grammatical, it may be right. Somebody may say it is all right. But when I check about the comprehensibility, the more it gets away from the head noun, it lost in the middle before you can get.
And also we must remember the relative clauses in these languages are participial relative clauses.
Yes.
And therefore they are more like a unit. you know,
Yes.
so they can play the modifying role better.
Yeah. In the adjective also, I didn't go into detail, but I find it schwa prefixation and a schwa-less word. This is crucial. When there is no schwa, should I still patava? Should I? It is a reduced relative. It behaves like more relative clause like.
Yeah.
So that's why it can have more expansion, enhancement of the phrases. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there should be a typological, you know, workshop just looking at the order of adjectives in Tibeto-Burman languages. You know, why don't you organize? You know, Surmangali organize it. You can do it online.
Yeah, sure.
With very specific questions, we can ask the participants. Give us the order of these adjectives: size, color, shape, nationality, etc., and just look at the comparative pattern. That will be a good beginning, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a very good idea, Tanmay. It should be planned.
I think we'll just take one last question and we will conclude. So, Sahini, you raised your hand if you have anything to say.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I thank you for the interesting paper, sir. And I also want to add my understanding on the derived adjective in like Pula and Mao. So these two languages are very close, and even they could understand each other. But one interesting pattern here I see is that in Mao, like any other Tibetan languages, the derived adjective can be formed by the prefix ka with any verb.
Yes.
However, in Pula, the derived adjective is formed with the suffix of ju. So what is like interesting here is when we look at the history of the adjectives, I think in prototype, which many senior scholars have said that probably the adjectives derive from verbs or a noun. Like, of course, they have not clearly proven, but I think if we can go in that line, where was there adjective in the past, or is it coming from the noun or from the verb? So that always trigger my mind. Yeah.
So in Pola, the zo is it a nominalizer that you're putting in the after the?
So technically, any verb, if we add with you, they can also behave like a nominal, like a subject.
So is it a nominalizer in other parts, in other categories? Like zo, can you use as a nominalizer in nominalizing other verbs, not making it adjective as such, but just to make?
Yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
Similarly,
so it's like in Maithilan that Surmangal showed.
Similarly, in Mao, even the ka, it normalizes the verb. So the language is so close, and the things, how these things have changed. So that's an interesting thing.
In Mao and the Pola, don't you use only the prefix, not the suffix?
No, in Pola we don't use prefix.
Ka or ju. So likely
ju is suffix.
Yeah, we may link this kind of structure with Manipuri, but it is less in Manipuri, of course, but historically there may be some connection. Like as I said, ahan. The word ahan, it may be elderly, or it may be used as a noun also. Ahan could be and han. Han comes from the verb. Han means be older.
Yeah, so structurally, I think we can't differentiate between verb and adjectives if we're to constitute as a word class in the grammar. But semantically, of course, if we map it with the English so-called adjectives, probably we can thinly line it out. But I think structurally within the sentence structure, I think it's hard to give a parameters. This is adjective, this is verb, because they all can be suffix or prefix with those morphemes.
No, we do. In fact, this is even in some cases adjective remains as a very distinct category, but in many of the
is there
languages,
any parameters or like features that we can distinguish between like verb and adjective in Manipuri?
The parameter so far, it is very thin, like when used, which sometimes it would be preferred to call it the verbs, semantics of the verbs, whether, or the, looking at the semantics, some of the verbs that indicates the property, telling about the property. So pi it could be the property of something or someone, then you may use somebody call it, this is when you use it as a verb, this is a predicative use of adjectives. So like, but in the other way around, it may be, of course, syntactically speaking, it would be a verb in the predicate. Right, it takes the tense, mood, aspect, whatever. So those verbs, when it become derived and used in the noun phrase, we preferably call it adjectives because it modifies the head noun in this way only.
So when you say it modifies the head noun, doesn't mean any verb which is already adjectivized or nominalized can modify the head noun? Isn't that true?
In Manipuri, or you're talking
yes,
about?
Yes, in Manipuri. In Manipuri.
In Manipuri, of course, there are verbs, definitely there are verbs, certain verbs or majority of the verbs we subcategorize as state verbs like color terms or the say good or those verbs, they can easily be derived as used as a modifier, okay, or to modify a noun, but not all the verbs, though you may form it, but it is nowhere to use it sometimes.
Okay, so if not all the verbs, I think that gives a good criteria to differentiate between the two word class if you want to constitute in the grammar. Yeah, but in Mao and Pula, it's hard to have that kind of differentiation that this verb group or this so-called, let's say, color terms, or let's say any types of verb you try to come up, it can always take even the perfective marker or even the like future marker.
Sorry to interrupt, Sahini, we're running short of time because in 10 minutes the presenters have to be there for the next session.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Participants will also have to take a break because it would be
yes, that is very interesting.
So you can continue discussing the next session. So I'd like to request Dr. Pijan to conclude, and I think our Dokachi madam, if you are there, then you can.
Yeah, she's here. She joined.
Yeah, something went with my connection, so I have to rejoin again. So I would like to conclude this session, I would like to thank the paper presenters. We have 2 exhaustive paper today, and it's very interesting. And we have learned many things from both the presenters. So thank you once again. And I'll be concluding this session for now. Thank you so much, and over to Bijan.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Togachi Marak. Thank you, Madam, for the smooth conduct of the session. So really, these 2 papers were really interested. There was a good discussion also, and we are very sorry that because of the time constraint, we cannot take all the questions. So yes, and to the as a supplement to the query of Saini, I think I can give some supplement on that, but let's take some other time. The paper presenters, Isani Baisya, Professor Tanmoy Bhattacharjee, Jyoti Sharma, and Dr. Rai Surmangol Sharma. Thank you very much, sir, and Isani Jyoti for presenting such a wonderful and interesting paper. So we look forward also in the near future such type of works. And with this note, we conclude this session. Before that, I would like to announce that the next session, which is on phonology 3. Actually, earlier it was scheduled from 12, but we have updated the time schedule, and it will start by 11:30. So all the paper presenters of the next session, if you are around in this Zoom room, it is informed that to join session 15 minutes ahead of the scheduled time. That is 11:15. It is almost 11:10 now. So with this note, I close this session and we'll meet in the next session. Thank you all. Thank you.